Hello. I'm going to be recording myself working on my Modal Shell environment slash, I guess, programming language that I've been building. I'm building this in Rust, which I don't know. I'm a somewhat experienced C++ programmer, so a lot of the ideas in Rust make a lot of sense and are kind of like clearly motivated, but I'm still getting the hang of actually programming in it. I've recently been kind of turned on to the hype of recursive descent parser combinators, and there's some cool Rust libraries for that, like using nom, which I've enjoyed using it so far. And the main idea for this shell scripting language is that it's modal. So we can have like a command mode where everything works sort of the way you expect. See, we just type, everything we type is interpreted as a command and then arguments. Okay, the minus is weird because of binary operators, but that's still under construction. That's fun. But, well, that's easy enough to fix. When we're not, what we'd like to do is have it feel like a REPL sometimes. That's the interesting thing here, once you can get the command part to actually work. But in the REPL mode, like, suddenly we're like doing OCaml type of stuff, right? We can have a nice type system, we can make bindings, everything is a value, we can, I think I have a lot of ideas here, but I'd like to, obviously going to add functions, and maybe we want to be able to store the functions as a script to kind of build up a notebook of the stuff you do in your shell, jump back and forth between command mode and expr mode. And we have some special commands like mode or :m. You can do help. So anyway, the idea is you are in like a REPL type environment in expr mode where you can do powerful stuff, save some bindings, name some stuff, then go back to expr mode and make it really easy, or command mode and make it really easy to actually like run shell stuff, pipes, job control, like that whole world. And right now, going from being in Bash or ZSH or whatever to going to being in Python or in GHCI or whatever, there's nothing tying those two together. The things you do in your powerful REPL aren't exported back to your shell naturally. And so I think it would be quite cool to marry the two a bit more. And I started by trying to just make a shell that was expr mode, but I started running into like obvious problems, like, what if you do let ls equals 3, and then you run ls? That's not a command anymore. And so then, you start doing the normal stuff of introducing syntax that says like this is a command or not, like very similar to how in Bash, x equals 3, $echo $x, right? It's always got to be a command. This gets all kludgy, and the thought I had was maybe if you do it modally, like VI, my favorite editor, you kind of get the best of both worlds and always feel good. So that's what I'm working on. That's very high level. Right now, the code is in it's in a state, and that's because I've been sort of drunken late night hacking on it and just like bashing it into shape, exploring different ideas. And right now, I'm trying to get that modal concept working because it was a late idea. It wasn't the foundational idea. Like I said, I started with like, let's make a shell that feels like OCaml. Well, and so the result is that, we're transitioning between the two pieces of code, right? We started off with like a pretty regular parse tree here, like an expression consists of a command, an assignment, a conditional, a binary operator, or a kind of single unitary expression, and then those can be like a number, a string, an identifier, or a parenthesized expression. A command is a string and a vector of strings, right? Like sort of exactly how you would imagine parsing this stuff. But I'm trying to transition it to having like this kind of statement idea where, what what is a line at this environment? It's either an expression or command, or a special command like quit or change modes or help. And how should command in command mode differ from command inside $parens in expr mode? Like, should those be the same parsing? Should those be stored in the same way? Sort of. How does that all work? I've flirted with actually just storing like Rust process command objects rather than having my own representation of a command. That kind of falls apart if you want to recursively evaluate its arguments, because you need to store the original parsed thing rather than strings. So basically that is all kind of messy right now, and I'd like to sort of do what I often do, which is hack, then sleep on it, think about it, and try to like rewrite it better. So the idea I'm going to be playing with, I don't think that tutor really makes any sense anymore, is to make command be the same within expr and within statement. Have commands and exprs both reference each other, to use $paren or maybe brace. We'll see like if the syntax should be symmetrical or not once you start playing with it. Switch you into exactly the same change behavior as if you changed modes. So if you're in command mode, anything inside $paren is exactly the same as expr mode. If you just took it out and ran it in expr mode, it should work. And then vice versa. And I think that will kind of make the parsing and interpreting both a lot cleaner and clearer. Hopefully that's true. So I think for that, the first idea I had was that I should I'm going to keep cargo culting my traits. I don't know. I actually need to learn about traits. I need to read that chapter of the book. But I think what I need is an arg. That's going to be like a concept that needs to be, and we'll see what all of this needs to be public. We're still kind of, we're in heck mode still. An arg is going to be the thing that's in the vector of args. And an arg will either be a string or an expression, and which it is will depend on the mode you parsed it in, right? So it should either be a command arg, which is a string, or it should be an expr arg, which is a box expr. I think that's right. And maybe these names could be a little more elegant, like raw and recursive. Raw and rec, that's sexy. Okay, we'll start with that. Maybe we'll rename it again 10 times. So I think that's like a really good basic start to the arg type. And I'm gonna write the code up to parse an arg, and then I'll replace it inside this command struct, and then I'll replace the command parsing to use that parsing, bubble it all the way up. And hopefully the high level structure will still work, because they're already both using command. Probably have to change the interpreter quite a bit. Okay, so I'm going to close the interpreter right now because we're not really looking at that code. So, I'm messing with like submodules, and it seems like really not worth the juice isn't worth the squeeze, but maybe I'm just not doing it right yet. And there's a huge kludge here for not figuring out like the actual like names of the nom errors. So this code is going to get chucked, but I believe that this command is the expr one, whereas this command is this is the actual like parser command code. So we're gonna be modifying that soon enough. Okay. So now how we parse an arg depends on the mode. That's a fact. So the input should include the mode. Perhaps the mode is global. You can't know without the mode as context whether to parse it as a string or as a rec, I believe. So, yeah, that's right. So I think the dispatch question is the really interesting one here. And we're going to get to the bottom of it, but we haven't yet. Okay, so the input is a string. It's already handling spaces. So I think we just return alphanumeric 1. And again, like, you know, there's a big to-do here of figuring out like what the actual correct like POSIX shell behavior is. It's probably not alphanumeric 1. It's probably going to be accepting a Unicode or some other God knows what. But that's if this turns out to feel useful, then I think we take it from the top, making the kind of base components robust. Like not robust, like correct. Right now they're toys. I don't think we need the question mark. In fact, we don't. Okay. I think this is it. This will just... that's not right. It shouldn't be a... Oh no, it's an arg. So we do need to... It's not just alphanumeric 1, because that's a string. We need to put it into... Okay, so we're going to need to do lag. Okay, and then we return it as a arg raw a.toString. This is where the kind of the way my parsing is working is you take the input. We're not going to try to keep the input around and refer to it because like we might be writing a compiler for this language at some point and keeping all the input around for the lifetime of compiling it seems silly compared to just copying it once when you start into the AST. That doesn't seem like a worthwhile optimization. Perhaps that's wrong. Excuse me, I have some crap in my keyboard. Okay. So I should compile, do the right thing. And I'm going to just change this alphanumeric 1 to arg. So now v is a vector of args, not strings, and show. I think we don't need this into or we don't need this map anymore because before this was doing the toString bit, but now we handled that with the arg. So this seems right to me now. This won't compile because command here needs to be arg. Okay, so now but it's not modal. It's the... I see. Okay, cool. This is actually way better. So for now, we're old. This variation only handles the string variant. We can't recursively use our bindings. We're going to change this code to say if it detects the tag, it'll be an alt between the tag containing a recursive expression or just a string. Yeah. And then it's always, you're always in command mode when you're parsing a command. There's no mode here anymore. That's going to be a lot cleaner. Okay, great. So I love that. I think this will compile and parse. I think so now I need to go to the interpreter. command. And I think the only problem here is that arg might not just be a string anymore. So we need to match arg. And if it's a raw string, then we just add it to the proc. And if it's a rec box e, or sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just trying to remember how the recursive evals work with boxes. Okay, so here the E is a box and we just dereference it. Run command. Okay, so we're not going to pattern match into the box, we're just going to... Sure, great. And for now, we're going to have this return. That makes sense. We need to get the string that the expression comes out to. Right, everything eventually can be boiled down to a string on a shell. But right now, I want to do nothing with it. So I'll just do nothing. That seems like a way to introduce a nothing. And maybe don't support recursive command exprs yet. Oh, this is gonna need some formatting. Oops. Okay. It's actually the right type. And now, let's see if it look cool if it just compiles. Oh, of course not. Raw A not found in the scope. Of course, okay. It's not really raw, it's arg raw. Arg rep. And we need to include arg from create AST. Okay, let's solve that. And that's a mute command. Okay. Let's see. Oh. No. I don't think we're going to be binding to this thing, so I just need to do something like that. I want this matched to a unit value. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Maybe there's a nicer way. Cool. We have some. Okay, that's a first problem for binary operator. That's easy. Well, I actually would like to fix that next, but let's fix the warnings. Also, just do some. I haven't formatted in forever. Bad for my can't commit here. Bunch of formatting changes. Okay, well that's embarrassing. Anyway, let's fix the error warnings and commit it. Okay. All right, E is discarded. So we'll underscore it, and we didn't use input here, huh? That's not right. Thanks, warning. Because we do want to. We're not gonna eat that. We're not gonna gobble that up. Fantastic. Okay. Sweet. Okay. So now the thing we want to work is let d equal source. Oops, we're not on the semicolons yet. What? Ah, command mode. Okay, expr mode. So we're gonna have to be. These things shouldn't crash the system eventually. Okay, so now we've stored D. Great, and now we can imagine doing ls source. And the other thing that should work is, but that doesn't parse it. Because when you're parsing a command, there's nothing that's looking for the dollars, it's just looking for alphanumerics. So let's call the command arg now. It's also going to return an arg. Now we need a, well, we're going to need a tag. And probably this stuff is going to get cute later. We can reuse this like wrapping concept and make it all tradey or whatever. We'll see. Maybe we can do it with delimited. There's a lot of refactoring opportunities here, but we're just trying to make it work. And the actual parsing is this one we want to actually recurse to. So now the thing inside there has to be an expr. Then we return okay, input arg rec of new expr. Seems right to me. Whoa. Tag not found. Okay. Right. Well, where does tag live? Character complete? Bytes complete. And maybe we'll make all this thing streaming later, but that's also not a me problem right now. Expr not found in this scope, of course. So it's probably crate : expr, not expr. And I think the next refactor, I'll probably do this literally next, is to pull the expr stuff into its module. Yeah, arg not found in the scope, of course. So now we're gonna alt between these two, and alt is just a nom combinator that sort of tries the first thing. If it works, uses it. Tries the second. If it doesn't, try the second thing. If it works, uses it. So it's a good way to kind of combine. At least to me, it feels like a good way to combine these like alternatives into an enum, right? You just sort of parse in the order you think that they ought to be parsed. So an arg is really well, spacing is the only part of this recursive descent and combinator thing I find gross right now. Think about it every time. Don't think we need to worry about spaces here. I think we just return alt of command arg expr arg. Now the interesting question is, do we care Since command arg doesn't parse expr arg, so I think that's great. Whoa. What do we got? Great. Parse. Ah, yes, parse. Oops. We're in the parse module, so it doesn't make sense to. Alt is not found because we haven't brought it in from branch. I have been doing everything in the parse module directly, so I have all these I have this use inside the module, but not inside my command parsing module. So I keep forgetting them. Okay. Expr arg, I must have put a semicolon. Yep. Fantastic. Okay. Mode. Don't need that print line, because we do. Cool. Wait, do we? Weird. I'm actually quite confused why this worked. Shouldn't have. Oh, it didn't work. We just ran out last on an empty string. Because we didn't modify the part. This is not an error, just a string. Okay. But still, we're close. So now we need to interpret the expression. And now we're finally going to use the environment, which is cool. We're going to let v equal val of n and e. We don't need to bind it and match it. Just match it directly. And what are our values? And again, we need to I think there's some trait thing we really need to learn how to do to make this not a nightmare. Almost certainly not the best way, but it'll do. That's a string. We have to do with integer and with string. Integer, it's just a little part. We haven't parsed integers yet, which is stupid, but that minus unary operator, we'll figure it out. Okay. Duplicated this code here, but we'll leave the to do here too to make it feel more urgent. Should we evaluate the thing recursively, which will give us a value? Possibly. If we eventually do statements, we can modify the environment too. But we got the value and we return it as a string, and we'll let a equals that, so that's our string, and we'll do proc.arg. Okay. I think that's pretty sweet. we could just do proc.arg of the whole match, but then binding it makes that code a little easier to read. Now we're really binding them and we should run it. Darn. Ah. Sick. Okay. Let d equals source. ls source. Fantastic. Very cool. Args, exprs. Let's try one more thing. I think we want to see what happens in this one, right? That's nothing. Woo! Now we're cooking, and we can do I'm going to try to do some kind of recursive LS thing with this. So we got the first level. The colon stir thing is going to mess this up, but what if we do ls of L1? L1 ls Okay, well, we'll get there. We'll get there. That's aspirational. Cool. All right. Should that be all for this video? Yeah, that'll be all for this video. I like that. Thank you for stopping in and paying attention to my dumb stream.